So welcome everyone to today's Lunch and Learn. Thank you for coming today. I'm very excited about this topic. My name is Beth Mead. I'm the president of the Local Impact Alliance, which includes the community foundations of Canton, Plymouth, and Westland. We host these Lunch and Learns almost every month. We take a couple months off in the summer so that you can all go on vacation and we can kind of come up with new and exciting topics. I do invite anyone who's in the room to please let me know if there's a topic you're interested in. Even if you don't know of a speaker, maybe we can help find a speaker. But if you're hearing things in your community or there's something you want to know about, I'd love to talk to you. We've done everything from really hot topics to some things as simple as how to plant a pollinator garden. So we'll cover everything. If we think we can get people in the room, we want to be here to educate our community. So I'm going to pass it over now to one of our vice chair of the Canton Community Foundation, Mr. David Hammond. I'll turn it off.
Yeah, thanks. We'll mute that. As Beth said, we've been doing this a couple of years. Thank you so much for coming. We try to be a resource for the community to highlight interesting people talking about interesting issues that are impactful for the community. So I want to echo what Beth said. If you have ideas, let us know. If you have people doing interesting things, let us know. We'll talk to them because it's very important that we highlight issues that are important to you. So we want to be very accessible. The way this will work is Debbie will talk for roughly half of the time, and then the other half of the time is going to be open for questions. So what I'll do is walk around with a mic, Phil Donahue style, and we've got a number of people on Zoom. So be patient with me as I get to you for your questions so the people on Zoom can hear your questions. So I think we should get started. And first, let me give an introduction. Debbie McCullough has been the executive director of the Michigan Library Association since 2019. She places a high priority on any organization or project that creates a sense of place, showcases a community's authentic heritage, and contributes to the economic prosperity of a region. And libraries, of course, are no exception from that. She's a passionate advocate of arts and culture in the state and on a national level. She's led the Arts Council of Greater Lansing, ArtServe Michigan, the Michigan Association of Community Arts Agencies, and the League of Historic American Theaters. So very happy to welcome our guest, Debbie McCullough.
No, there. Can you hear me? Okay. I heard an echo, like it was really big. So if it happens, just let us know, though. Okay. So I'm very happy to see you all here. And I'm going to take a quick little poll, though, just so I know who's in the room. So raise your hand if you're a library professional. Oh, I got a lot of libraries. I cut all of the stuff about local library out of my presentation. How about library card holders? All right. And how many of you use your library more than once a week? That's a good number. You should just turn around and watch. And who brought their lunch? All right, just a couple. I was thinking like everybody's going to be eating while I was, making the presentation. And then, does everybody know your local library director? Who knows her personally? All right, she's right here, front and center. So, and I also want to just take just a moment because a lot of what I'm going to talk about today has been molded and shaped by a really wonderful ambassador group through the Michigan Library Association. And one of those members of our Intellectual Freedom Task Force is sitting right here. Paris, can you just wave at everybody? So a lot of what you're going to hear was put into place by those that are a part of the organization. So let me give you a little bit of background on MLA. I'll refer to the Michigan Library Association as MLA, just in case you need another acronym in your life. But we are a nonprofit membership organization. We are a nonpartisan organization, and we have over 2,500 members. So library professionals, the directors, the library workers, library trustees, library supporters, retired librarians. So it's a really big, robust group. There's about 7,000, maybe a little bit more than 7,000 library workers in the state of Michigan. So we have a really good chunk of them as members of the organization directing our work. So we are a membership organization and they direct it. We have a small staff of 5. And we really have to listen to the membership to make sure that we are molding and shaping what they want out of a professional organization for the libraries in the state of Michigan. So we have been around since 1891. So that's a lot of years old. And our mission really hasn't changed that drastically over the years. It gets tweaked every so often, but we are here to lead the advancement of all libraries, so school, public, academic, tribal, business, medical libraries in the state of Michigan to be better at what they do. So there's a lot of professional development that happens, a lot of education and training. We are the state's advocate at the legislative level. So we are at the offices of our legislators throughout the state, really on a daily basis, expanding all of the opportunities that our libraries can take advantage of. So state funding, we protect penal fines. If you don't know what a penal fine is, I can explain that later. But libraries are constitutionally protected to receive penal fines. If you go speed, go speed. We love it because libraries are at the end of that fee that you pay for a penal fine, right? So go ahead, be my guest. So, and then we talk a lot about, and what we're going to talk about today is just protecting the freedom to read. And that's really an important, in the last 2.5 years, that has been the main focus of some of the work that the Michigan Library Association has taken on. So, but we do a lot of conferences and trainings. We have awards, we have grants, we have a job board, we provide technical assistance. Libraries call us and say, do you know where do I find, I'll call it the librarian's librarian, right? Where can I get access to something, right? Maybe it's more resources for capital improvements, right? Where's the money for that? Where can I find more dollars? So we answer a lot of questions, but we are directed by a board of director, 18 board members. We have about 200 of those 2,500 members that are what I call ambassadors or volunteers for the organization. And because my background isn't in librarianship, my background is in theater. So I come from a backstage aspect, but my whole life has been directing organizations like this on a local, a statewide, and a national basis that provide training, provide advocacy, and engage a bigger membership to actually take on some of the values that we all hold. So anyway, so that's just a little bit about MLA. And then again, today I'm going to talk a lot about the protecting the freedom to read, which is why you're here. So sometimes I will call this talk, don't tell me what to read, how to read, when to read, where to read, who to read, and why to read. Those are protected rights that you all have to make sure when you walk into a public library or that you have your First Amendment right is for you to be able to read anything that you choose. And we are all different. I am not the same as you. I'm not the same as you. I'm not going into the library to find the same kinds of things. I might have issues in my life that I want to find resources about. I want to go into the library and have my privacy upheld. Your privacy is very important in the library world. Nobody knows what you read. And I want to be able to go into the library just like you do and find the books and the resources and the materials that allow me to live the life that I want to lead. Not the life you want me to lead, but the life I want to lead. So we all have those rights. That's our First Amendment right. We have the right to choose and to have access to information, to anything that we want, right? So this is definitely kind of where we're going to head in this conversation. And it's a little bit of a negative. I don't want it to be a negative. I just want you to understand that we all have rights. And rights don't start at age 18 either, right? Our rights start when you're born. So even little children, even teenagers, even our young adults have First Amendment rights when they walk into our public libraries, which, by the way, are one of the last public institutions in the United States. What else, where else can you go? Okay, the post office is a public institution. I don't want to hang out there, though. Secretary of State, I don't really want to hang out there either, right? And then the library, the public library. So we want to make sure that when you walk in the door, that your rights are protected, and that you have the right to read what you want. So why now? What's going on in the world? Like two and a half years ago, when we started kind of looking around the nation, looking in Texas and Florida, and I'm sure you've heard about some of the issues that are happening across the state, the nation. We started seeing censorship and book banning, and you probably know those words. I mean, we hear those words a lot in our, in what we're doing. But material challenges are not new. From the very beginning of time, we have seen books burned and removed and gotten rid of, and we've tried to find when was like the first documented case of like when censorship happened, and we found that a Chinese emperor back in 2059 BC felt that if all previous records, right, historical records were destroyed, so prior to his reign, he thought that history could begin with him. Well, isn't that interesting? Why would we want to remove history? I think we want to retain that. We want to archive it. We want to know, we want to read our history so we know where we came from, so we know where we're going. But he wanted to remove all of that and censor that and ban it and destroy it, so that history began with him. And if you understand how book banning has been working and material challenges have been working over the last 2,000 years then, since his reign, we have seen the Bible banned, the works of Shakespeare, Charles Darwin, Mark Twain, Kurt Vonnegut, Toni Morrison, hundreds and hundreds of authors and hundreds, thousands, millions probably of books that have been put on lists that someone does not like. And then it's a decision for the public library then, if somebody goes through a material challenge, right, or a reconsideration process, it's for the library to determine, is that an obscene work? And should we take that off of the shelves? We've even seen, I think this is funny because my kids are 35 years old now, but they grew up on Harry Potter. And Harry Potter has been banned in many locales. Anybody know why? Witchcraft, wizardry. I mean, how interesting that a fantasy book causes someone to say, I don't like that. I don't want anybody else in the world to read it, or in my community at least, to read that book. But those are your choices. Your choice is to read Harry Potter. If you want to, how easy is it to pull a book off of the shelf, look it over, figure out if you want to read it, and if you don't, you put it back because somebody else wants to read that book. Somebody else may need that book, and it may not be Harry Potter. It may be something else that your family, that you are going through, that you have to have resources. And I continue to talk a little bit about, it's shocking that somebody who randomly picks up a book that, that traumatizes them, because that's kind of how they come at it, and they may consider unconventional or unpopular or unacceptable. I mean, what on earth are parents doing with the internet? You know, it's so blatant in our public libraries, yet our internet is full of an immediate click on something will take you to sites unseen, right? There's a lot of places I don't want to go on the internet. I hope you think that too. But there's a lot of books in the library that I do not like personally. I do not need some of those books on the library shelves, but somebody does. Somebody does. So right now, what we're going through is in today's world, in the last 2.5 years, what we're seeing are books on history, books on race, books on the LGBTQ, IA plus, authors and themes like that, sexuality. These are all on the line right now, and we are trying to protect those kinds of materials that are on our shelves from being removed from our shelves or moved off of our shelves or weeded off of our shelves or destroyed or hidden within the book stacks because somebody, one person, does not like that book. So there's a number of, I bring this to your attention. 2.5 years ago, we weren't seeing a lot of book challenges. So maybe 1 or 2 in this, even in the whole state. And now we're seeing, and I'm going to go to another slide that shows you a little bit more, but PEN America, if you don't know PEN is about poets and authors and publisher, you know, they are about the authors of certain pieces. And they identified, in the last year or so, they've identified over 50 groups that are operating on the national and statewide basis and local, who are developing campaigns, and they're mobilizing around what they view are the dangers of books in our K through 12 schools, in our public libraries, and they're advocating for book restrictions. And that includes, I know you've heard of Moms for Liberty, but some of the others you might not have heard of. U.S. Parents Involved in Education, No Left Turn in Education, Mass Resistance. There's a Mary in the library. I think she's now Laverne in the library. I don't even know her name any longer, but she changes her name every couple of weeks. That are sharing things, and we all know how social media has kind of ramped itself up over the last few years, right? They're sharing things over social media, and then it's shared neighborhood to neighborhood, community to community, and we're seeing lists of books, 450 pages long, of books that they don't want to see in our public libraries and in our schools. So we're paying attention. Like, if you haven't gone to those websites, I would say don't, but I go to them because I need to make sure that I can respond to some of the negativity in a much more positive way. So, but again, most of these groups have been formed in the last 2.5 years, and we're just seeing an uptick in challenges that are happening across the nation and here in Michigan. So I'm just going to read a few of the cities that we have been dealing with in the last 2.5 years, and I think you'll get a gist. Ferndale, Jamestown Township, Kent County, Sheboygan, Petoskey, Dickinson County, Lapeer, Caro, Niles, Macomb, Whitehall, Troy, Marquette, Hudsonville, Zeeland, Belding, Allendale, Fowlerville, Clinton Township, Portage, Salem, South Lyon, Bay City, Dearborn, Heartland, Galesburg, Brighton, Hancock, Davison, Greenville, Cass County. It just keeps going. I've got 3 pages of cities and school systems and public libraries that have been dealing with challenges to the books that they have on their shelves. So what's initiating some of this, and kind of where is it going? So who initiates attempts to censorship, to censor books? Usually patrons and parents. That's the biggest, that's 50%, almost 50, more than 50% of who are challenging these books, right? So, and then there's some things happening with these pressure groups, with the boards and the administration. So sometimes even internally, there's some issues. And then where do they take place? I think this is exactly opposite here in Michigan. This is national information that I'm sharing with you. I think school libraries are probably at 54% and our public libraries are probably at 39%. So it's exactly the opposite here in Michigan. I don't know why, but I give you the kind of the lowdown on what. But then what are they trying, what are the censorship attempts about? Mostly about the books, right? Graphic novels, books, a big percentage. But then we're also looking at, people complaining and putting up resistance about displays, about films, about the programming that's happening at our libraries, and we're just seeing this huge increase. So this slide shows you the increase. So just look at from 2004 to 2014, anywhere between 200 and 400 books nationally. This isn't just in Michigan, this is national numbers. That's really low, right? That's not a lot. That's, a couple per state, right? But then in 2.5 years ago, in 2021, we started to see this increase. So 1,800 books that were marked, unique titles, right? That were pushed to a reconsideration process. In 2022, we saw that increase to 2,500 books nationally. And in 2023, we are seeing over 4,000 books being challenged, banned, and removed from our libraries. These are huge increases, yet I think that even in this chart, I think we're not even seeing the real numbers. I think this is probably 3 or 4 times the amount. This is self-reported by our libraries to the American Library Association. We don't keep track in the state. We don't have the capacity to do that. So we look at the numbers that are coming from our national organization. But many libraries don't want to report. You don't want to be in the news. I'm sorry, I don't want to be in the news either, so, and I don't think anybody wants to be in the news for, somebody saying that there is pornography or there is a book on slavery that is not accurate in our libraries. So we want to be, I want you to recognize that these are low numbers. These are the documented numbers, but these are very, very low. And I can guarantee with all the communities that we've been dealing with here in Michigan, most of them have not reported, and they have not even reported to MLA. We find out sometimes through reading minutes of board meetings. We find out through media reports, and sometimes they don't want to go any further. They want to keep it insular. So. And these are the stories then that are really, again, I talked a little bit about that at the beginning, but protagonists of color, LGBTQ characters and topics, sexual or health-related content, addressing race or racism, historical topics, transgender characters, religious and ethnic themes. This piece was done about 1.5 years ago, so it may have changed a little bit. This is done by PEN America, but I don't think the content has changed. It may be the numbers have changed a little bit. So you can see themes in what is being challenged and banned at our public libraries and in our school libraries. And if you all want to know, if you all want to kind of look, this is the current top 10 banned books in the country. And I will say that Genderqueer will probably never go, there's a #1 book for like the last maybe 3 or 4 years. I don't think it's ever going to go off of this list as #1. It is being challenged every day at almost every library. So, but you can see a theme running through all of these. Probably 8 of them have LGBTQ themes attached to them. So we're seeing I won't call it a culture war, but there is something happening culturally around our country that is bringing focus to some of these issues in different ways. Don't want you to fly the flag, at the school. I don't want you to put a button on, right? I don't want you to have a book in the library. We want to come back to, our Christian values. I'm a Christian. I very accepting, right? So I think that we have to just recognize that there's rhetoric that's happening in our country that is that has brought focus to some of these issues in ways that I'm not sure if we were expecting. So these are, I will say though that the Michigan Library Association never talks about a book. We never talk about genderqueer. We never talk about All Boys Aren't Blue. We never talk about Toni Morrison's book. We never talk about the book. That's for our local libraries to, when they get a reconsideration, they have to talk about the book. And they have, definitely, there's lots of toolkit items of where they can go to find the resumes and the backgrounds on these books and why a publisher put it out and what age ranges are supposed to be, appropriate for that book. But these are the key messages from a statewide library association that works in advocacy. We talk only about 4 things, and the 4 things we talk about are the values of of what the library is about. And the first one is about access. Libraries are open to all, to every single person in your community, to everyone in this state, no matter your religion, if you're married or not, if you're LGBTQ, if you are black or white, or you're a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian. We are open to everybody. The doors are wide open. We want you to come in. We want you to participate with us. We want you to engage with the library. We want you to find the books you are looking for. Last week, I was looking for architectural books. That has, hopefully they're not going to be banned soon, but you never know. And I'm a new grandma, and I take out books like Everywhere Babies and Tango Makes Three. Well, those 2 books are banned. It's like, why are they banned? Like, they're the cutest dang books I've ever read. And I read them to my grandson as often as I can. But I can't figure out why they're banned. And so you have to do your own research. This is like misinformation sometimes. You have to do your own research. You have to figure out why something is what it is. And in Everywhere Babies, the smallest picture, it's probably this big, has, I think, 2 males sitting next to each other holding a baby. And people didn't like that. And I was like, I can't even see it. Literally, I can't see the visual. There's nothing in the book about that. And Tango Makes Three is 2 male penguins adopting, which they do, right? Adopting an infant penguin, and it's like it's off the charts in terms of what I think that we all want to make sure that we have access to, and that if you don't like Tango Makes Three, put it back and find the next book over. Doesn't have anything to do with with that, right? It has to do with cars or teddy bears or something else. So access, though. Access is a very important value of our libraries, and because we're public institutions, we must make sure that our doors are open to everyone. That the libraries have a diversity of collections. I talked a little bit about this already. So the library has this for this person, that for that person, and then they have probably a few books that nobody's ever checked out that, in 10 years, they'll probably get rid of, right? So, but they have a diversity of collections. They are one of the last pieces of our democracy of protecting our libraries, of protecting our First Amendment rights and our constitutional rights to have access to information. And I will say it's their top value. I mean, it is intellectual freedom and the access to all of that and protecting that are at the core of librarianship. And they exude this aura of protecting First Amendment rights for every single person that walks into their library. And then we talk a lot about the qualifications of our librarians, they go through extensive educational training. Most of them have master's degrees in library sciences. They go through training beyond that, and there's a lifelong, how do you keep growing in this and making sure that you're following trends and issues. But the qualifications of our librarians are like any other profession. I don't know that profession. I'm a theater person. I'm in the back, I'm doing something totally different. You are all probably doing something totally different, whether you're a lawyer or an accountant or a photographer you have expertise, right, in those areas, and so do our librarians. And we have to trust our librarians to do the job that they are meant to do, which is to develop the collection, to weed the collection, and to listen to the concerns of the community. So we have to trust them to make sure that they're doing that work for us. And so I'm not going to go into this because I think this is probably more for the library, but how are they addressing intellectual freedom is they are creating policies and procedures for their collection development, for their reconsideration processes, for how a patron acts in the library, how they rent rooms, and they make sure that it is wide, that they have restrictions sometimes on how you are supposed to act in the library, but they make sure that it allows everyone to enjoy being in the library and that they have something to follow if somebody doesn't do what they're supposed to do. So they are all about privacy. There are privacy laws in the state of Michigan about your reading record, about your address, about all sorts of things, and that's really an important part of library work as well. I don't know where we went. Maybe we lost. There, thank you. What'd you do? Oh, gotcha. So I want to talk a little bit, and I'm going to go through this really quickly, and then we're going to open it up to questions and stuff. But the Michigan Library Association, through the help of our Intellectual Freedom Task Force, which was formed 2 years ago, developed. They figured out that there was just so much censorship and so much book banning and so much rhetoric happening. We were afraid if we weren't proactive about it, that we would be faced with a lot of legislative issues. We would be faced with a lot of local issues. I will say that with the vote in November of, I can't remember, 2021. We now have a trifecta in our House, our Senate, and our governorship are all Democratic. We have less legislative issues in the last 2 years than other states do. So we haven't seen a lot of legislation introduced about, banning and censoring and things like that. But we have seen, with all the places that I just named, we have been seeing a lot of that on a local basis. So our local school boards, our local public library boards, even some of our municipalities have gotten involved in that conversation. So we're fighting more local challenges than we are at a legislative level. So we wanted to develop a website and a place where our librarians could call, or people in the community could call and say, hey, there's something going on in my community, can you help? And how do you help? But we wanted to make sure that we had this website. It is mirighttoread.com. We are growing a coalition. There's probably 4,000 to 5,000 individuals that have joined this coalition to protect the right to read here in Michigan. So I encourage you all, if you go to it, to join. It's on the cover, you don't have to do anything else. There's no charge, there's no membership, there's nothing. We just want to make sure that we capture those individuals who believe in the same things that our library does, the values that our libraries hold. We want to make sure that we have I'll call it the citizenship that actually is helping us to bring focus to it. We can't fight it only within the library world. We have to have others in the community who value the same kinds of things, the freedom to read, right? And helping us to move the needle to make sure that we don't, that legislation and other kinds of things don't happen within our communities. So there's 10 things. That website also has every news article in the state of Michigan for the last 2.5 years about the book banning challenges that we've seen. It has information here on this. I'm going to go through these fast. There are 10 steps, 10 things to take action. It has a page where we have a hotline, so sending us a quick email, and then within the first 3 hours, somebody's going to get back to them. I do say it's me. So, and that's why I know it's so fast. But we are now working in collaboration with our regions. We have cooperative regions around the state of Michigan, and we're working with them as well. We can't be everywhere in the state, so we have these regional directors who can ramp up being present at some of these board meetings if they're needed. So the first take action is just join us. We'd love to have you be a part of it. There is strength in numbers, and when we can show that we have a lot of coalition members a part of this organization, we can show the legislators and those community members that we have a lot of people who believe in the same things that libraries do. The second is we want people to be posting on social media. We have developed, this is a turnkey operation. We have developed lots of social media posts. We've developed some visual posts. And if you just are interested in sharing things on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram or wherever you do your social medias, we have things that are already created that you can just drop in. We need letters. We need letters to the editor. We need to the local media. We need them to know that you as citizens believe the same things that we do about protecting the right to read. So if you're inclined to write a letter and be a part of that world, there's not a lot of newspapers left out there, but there's still opinion pieces, right? So we're still looking to make sure that they know why do you love your library? Why do you think that they should be open and accessible and have a diverse collection? And why do you think it protects your First Amendment rights? So we talk about a lot of those big picture things. This is way more important. This is attending a meeting. If you hear of something happening in your community, we want you to be present, not just during the times where you have to kind of argue your side. We want you to attend meetings because the more you can talk about access and diversity of collection and all of those things at a public meeting, whether it's a school board meeting or a public library board meeting, people start to get the grasp of that there is a contingent in our community, probably the majority of our community, that believes in our First Amendment rights, that we should be able to walk into a library and have access. We want to give a presentation. We have this presentation ready for anybody to do at your chambers of commerce, at your Rotary, anywhere you go. We can train you, we can teach you how to do it, but we have it already ready to go. If you're interested, there's a lot of these communities that I named earlier that needed a coalition built. We can't be there, and truthfully, all politics are local, right? I can't come into your community and say, oh, you should do this, because your politicians and the people on your city councils and your county commissioners, and they want to hear from the voters. They don't want to hear from Debbie, who's at a statewide level. They don't want to hear from me. I'll write a good letter, but they don't want to hear from me. They want to hear from those in the community that are voting for them, that they believe in what's going on. So we have one really good coalition organization that I always send people to. It's the Free to Read Rochester. They've had a lot of issues in Rochester, and they have built a great coalition. They've got lots of branding, and they are present at almost every school board and library board meeting. And be an ally. I will say, and I'll give a lot of credit, and all the librarians that are in this room, please thank them for the work that they're doing. They need a pat on the back every so often, maybe even just a hug, but bring them a cookie. I mean, they just tell them every time that you see them that they're doing a great job and that you believe in what they're doing. Share your name, share your contact with them, because if they do have a challenge in the library, they need to start to gather people, right? And you are the best people. If you're a patron of the library, if you're going to the library, you are the best people for them to say, oh, Sue came up to me last week and she offered any help that we could give. Sue, can you come over and help, right? We have an issue coming up. We need a lot of people. I can't be calling everybody, but you can, right? So we need that allyship. And then we need to continue to fight misinformation. There's a lot of it going around. You're going to see a lot more of it coming up before the election. I think it's really imperative that we all, if there's something that's posted and it's not correct, that we correct it. And then I've never thought I would say this, but MLA now is going to, I think everybody should run for office. If you believe in this, we need people like you to run for, maybe not for state senator or state representative, but your local library board needs you. And sometimes you're appointed, sometimes you're elected, but we need more people that believe in the First Amendment and that will stand up to these issues within our libraries. So we did a poll, a statistically valid poll, and these are going to go really fast. To find out how how voters in the state of Michigan felt. We really believed that if we were going to start to look at legislation to protect the right to read, we better know how to talk to our voters. We might want to get all of that information from them that we can pass along to our legislators. So these are just some of the findings that we had. Most everyone gave public libraries a very positive rating for the job they're doing to do programming and services and have a diverse collection of books. It's a good statistics. A big majority of Democrats, less in Republicans, a lot in independents as well, said books with a discussion about sex, gender identity, or sexual orientation should never be banned. 75% of voters agree that we need to protect the ability of young people to have access to books from which they can learn and understand different perspectives and help them grow. 83% would support, and this is a number from March of 2023. We repolled this one in November, and it's now climbed to 86% of voters would support state legislation that would protect the public's right to read. 71% of the voters, this is 800, again, 800 voters, this is just amazing, picked up their cell phone to a call that they didn't know who it was and answered these questions. Isn't that amazing? Like, would you call? I wouldn't answer my phone. So, anyway, 71% of voters agreed with the statement, book banning is un-American. And then 70% said that librarians are capable and trustworthy to decide which books and reading materials should be included with local library collections. This is a majority of the voting population in Michigan. Whether you agree with polls or you don't agree with polls, we wanted to make sure that we had something that we could share again with the legislators that would show them that a vast majority, not 51%, these are big numbers, trust our librarians, trust that we are doing a good job in our libraries, and want to help make sure that we're not banning books and censoring materials for themselves or for their neighbors. So I'm open to questions and discussion, and happy to share. Yeah, I like your shirt.
Let me run over with a mic so they can hear you on Zoom.
Nope. There. Nope. Lit up. I'll repeat. I'll try.
Not exactly about the right to read, but it is about having qualified, certified librarians. I read something this morning, which I did not vet, but it was so shocking, that Michigan is 47th in the nation with teacher librarian to student population. That is just so shocking. And thank goodness Plymouth Canton has one in every building. However, the district I taught in did not.
Yep.
And the article also said that several years ago, there was something in the Michigan Senate trying to make that a requirement for all schools, and it just sort of died in whatever they call that. This would be a really good time for the MLA to push that through right now, because we need a certified teacher librarian in every school.
I will say that there are 3 bills by Senator Camilleri and Senator Bayer who have just reproposed those this year. So remember, our legislative cycle is only 2 years long, right? And if it doesn't pass by the end of those 2 years, it dies, right? And then you have to reintroduce it. This has been introduced 3 times. This is the 4th, I think. And the great part of the 3 bills, I can't remember their numbers, but we can look them up for you. One is that certified school librarian in every school, that every school had to have a library. Can you believe that most schools don't have a library any longer? They don't even have a physical space for a library. And then the third one was something about if a school librarian wasn't available to be in the library, that an administrator or a teacher would have to be in that space. The great thing about what happened this year, and on April 16th, just 1 week ago today, there was a hearing at the budget, and they have proposed it's an unmandated, if it doesn't have a resource attached to it, it's just unmandated. Like, schools, as you know, have huge deficits. I think Ann Arbor is at $25 million right now. Like, holy crap. But they are proposing $25 million to fund this mandate, not for every school in the state of Michigan, but starting a process. So we're very, very hopeful that this year that those bills that you just talked about will move forward. So if you have access to the association called the Michigan Association of School Librarians, they have a take action form on their page, and they are pushing for you to contact your legislators right now, as we're in budget season right now, to make sure that your legislators know that you would support having a school librarian. And you're right, 47th in the country for having school librarians. I come from an arts background. The first thing gets cut is the arts, right? Music program, art programs. But the next thing are the librarians. And many schools who have, had rising costs have cut back on their personnel, and those are the ones that we lose. And that's devastating in my eyes. So thanks for the question.
My background was primarily in college and university libraries. Are there the same issues arising in those situations, or is this primarily school and public libraries?
Primarily school and public, but it's coming to academics. So we are hearing more from the Michigan Association of Academic Library that they are starting to experience this a little bit more as well. Not as drastic as public and school libraries. I think a lot of this, I don't know, maybe because of, I guess when you get to be, of the age of going to college, that there's a different focus, but most of the focus is on children and children's access to books. And remember, First Amendment rights don't start when you're 18, they start when you're born. So we have to make sure in a public library, parents are in charge of their children, right? You can't just drop them off, and parents are in charge of what they read, when they read, who they read. And in a school environment, while you're dropping them off for an extended part of the day, part of some of the work that we're doing is more public library focused than schools. Schools have there's a lot of nuance, right? Are we talking about the public in the school library? Are we talking about the teacher's classroom library? Are we talking about the curriculum when you want to ban a book, right? And so there's a lot of nuance to that. But when you go into a school environment and you don't like what your child is reading in a school, every school in the state of Michigan has an opt-out. If you don't want your child to read that, you opt them out. It's so simple, yet we're having this huge discussion about books that some people need to read, want to read, that other parents don't want their child to read, and they want to put a mandate on everyone. And they want to take away the right of everyone to read those books. I'm going to go into some real detail because I think this is really important. There's a lot of words out there. Pornography, salacious materials, obscenity. The only word that can be really defined in our public libraries is obscenity. There is a Supreme Court finding, it's called the Miller Test. Go look up the Miller Test, it's really important. There are three, I'm not gonna be able to say them out loud, but there are three prongs to the Miller Test. And it's the legal test for determining whether something constitutes obscenity. And so the first guy, and you have to match all three prongs. So the first prong is whether the average person applying contemporary community standards would find the work taken as a whole appeals to the prurient interest. 2, whether the works depict or describes in a patently offensive way sexual conduct specifically defined by the applicable state law. And 3, whether the work taken as a whole lacks serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value. And if they can't match all three of those, it's not an obscene book. So our libraries, and here's the key, our libraries have zero obscene books in their libraries. And why is that? Because they can't be sold. They're not published. They can't be sold. You can't buy it on Amazon. You just can't buy it. So our libraries have zero books on that are obscene. That's the word that can be defined. Now, how many of you go into the library, like I do, and find the romance novel, right? Okay, come on. There's a huge section in every library, and on page 100, it starts to get a little salacious, you get a little, so I'm just saying. So can you imagine if all of the books that even had, your definition of salacious is probably different from mine. Your definition of pornography is probably different than mine. Those words can't be defined. And so when you walk into a library, if you want to go to the romance section and pick up a book, it's there for you. And if you don't, go to the architectural section and pick up something else. So I think that's what you have to, you are in charge of making those choices. Choice is the key word. Choice is our freedom to choose any book that we want off of the shelves of the library. And if your library doesn't have it, they can probably get it for you.
Anybody else with questions?
There's a comment on the Zoom. She just wanted me to mention that the ABCs of Book Banning is a documentary with children talking about banned books. It's been nominated for an Oscar, and it can probably be found on the internet.
Very good.
Anybody else with some questions? Got a few more minutes? Debbie, I was going to ask you, when you showed some of those numbers, and I think it was 86% wanted statewide legislation to support the right to read. What's the status of that? Is there a movement to move that forward?
Thank you for asking. So last week, we were at the state capitol. We met with, there were 150 librarian and library workers at the state capitol for our advocacy day. They met with 80 of our 113 House members and 34 of our 38 Senate members. And there were 3 topics on their list. One was state aid to libraries, which is a vital resource for our libraries. The second is, can we find a capital improvement program so that we can keep up with, the elevator and the handicap bathrooms and all sorts of things like that. And the third piece was the Freedom to Read Act. We have 2 House members and 1 senator that was just identified last week that we are looking to propose and introduce the Freedom to Read Act. And that is really based on the reconsideration process at our public libraries. So we're starting with our public libraries. We're not starting with our school libraries. We're starting with public libraries. We think it's a little easier to handle. And we're not as expert in the school environment as we probably should be. So, but based on the reconsideration process, I don't know how it is in Canton, but I'm going to say kind of generally, if you don't like a book and you want to formally challenge it and take it before the director, that you fill out a form and you say, this is the title, this is why I don't like it, I've read the whole thing, check, and then you take it to the director, and the director then reviews that and says, well, this is why we should, whether we should keep it or not, I guess that's the question. But if it doesn't go against your civil rights, so civil rights are, our race, religion, age, marital status, all of those things. If it doesn't go against that, and it doesn't go against, it's not an obscene book, we're going to keep it on the shelf. So the director makes that determination. If the person that wrote that doesn't like what the director said, there's probably an appeals process. Remember, every local library works very differently, but this is kind of general. And then they can put that appeal back, and the appeal would go to the board of directors or the board of trustees. And then they have to make a decision, and the final decision, whether they keep that book on the shelf, whether it gets moved, whether it gets weeded, whether it gets whatever. So, and I will say in the majority of cases here in Michigan, most of the books have stayed on the shelf. Some have been moved, some have, there's just different groups, whether they're conservative, liberal, in the middle, they make different kinds of decisions. So, but the Freedom to Read Act talks about that reconsideration process and make sure that if for any reason that the reason for the basis for the request can't be made based on religion, race, color, national origin, age, sex, sexual orientation, gender identity or expression, height, weight, familial status, or marital status of the author or the subject matter. Those are in our Elliott Larson Civil Rights Act. We should never be able to take those kinds of books off of the shelves. And then we also want to make sure that the public library can't grant a reconsideration based on subject matter, content, or viewpoint of the material unless the material has been adjudicated to be obscene or otherwise unprotected by the First Amendment. That means it has to go to a court case. It has to go to court before the library could actually remove it. So we're writing up we're writing up the introduction of this legislation, and we're hoping that by the end of this year, by December, that we will have it introduced, approved by all of the House and the Senate, and moving forward for the governor's signature.
Okay, we're at time, so I want to make sure that we get everybody out on time. We'll be up here if you have any additional questions for Debbie, or if you have ideas for future lunch and learns. We'll be milling about here, so please feel free to come up and talk to us after we're done. But I want to thank Debbie for a great presentation. And we'll see you the next time. Thank you.